At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Welcome to Good Morning Outdoors, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the outdoor hospitality industry. From campgrounds and RV parks to glamping, outdoor resorts, adventure travel, and ecotourism, we'll be discussing all things outdoor travel and hospitality, so join us on Good Morning Outdoors every Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Matt, this is it.
We're live.
We've been kind of teasing this thing for a couple of weeks here now, and talking about this thing with Will and Michael and all the folks over at Hospitality FM. Buddy, I'm so excited to kind of kick this thing off and launch this with you.
Likewise, appreciate it. Thanks to everybody at the GMH teams and Hospitality FM. Thanks to you, Alex. Super excited to kick this thing off. So why don't we jump right into it?
Yeah, I think it's great. So for all you sort of normal GMH fans know, you are not in the wrong place. We're not kind of two random guys here coming onto your screen. We're the latest addition to the Good Morning Hospitality and Hospitality FM family of shows covering all the industry news, the trends, everything in outdoor hospitality. We're going to be talking about campgrounds, RV parks, camping, outdoor hotels, landscape resorts, adventure travel, ecotourism. Really, all of that stuff is a part of what we're trying to do here with this show as we kick off the launch of Good Morning Outdoors. I think Matt's having a little bit of connectivity issues, so we'll kind of wait for him to kind of come back on. But just to give folks sort of a little bit of a glimpse into what we're trying to do here, we're trying to build this into more than just a podcast, something that takes you beyond normal Thursday morning, something that really involves a lot of people in the community. Hey, Matt, glad you're back.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Sorry about that. But yeah, I heard what you said there. Wonderful intro to what we're trying to do here. We want this to be a community. We don't want this just to be a one-way conversation. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. It's a rapidly changing industry. We just wanted to intro ourselves a little bit, what we're aiming to do here, and then we've got some really fun news stories to jump into as this industry is ever changing on a day-to-day basis. So let's get into it.
Yeah, I'll give folks sort of a little bit of my background. And yeah, please send in your comments as we're live. Tell us where you're tuning in from today. We'd love to sort of volley back and answer comments and questions as we dive into the news. But I really got my start at 16 in the outdoor hospitality industry. It was, Matt, you've heard this story before, but my first summer job, something I definitely did not expect this to turn into a career. It was something I was hoping would make me a little bit of cash as a teenager in high school. Worked at a large campground and was able to kind of move up through the ranks in GM properties at some of the leading camping companies in the outdoor hospitality space. Today, I have the pleasure of working with you as director of marketing at Soma Hospitality, our business with our third partner, Sam. And that kind of brings us up to today. Matt, what about you?
So I kind of fell into the campground and glamping and outdoor hospitality business by accident going on 4 years ago now. With a background in commercial real estate finance and investments. Stumbled upon an opportunity to buy a campground. Lived on site with my wife in a tiny home on wheels, doing all the dirty jobs, standing behind the cash register, pumping sewage, cutting down trees, checking in and checking out guests, and just really grew to love the industry. And fell in love with the idea of kind of becoming a lifer, and bought a few more campgrounds, got involved in a few more businesses. Now a managing partner at Soma Hospitality, advising other investors and developers in the wide spectrum of outdoor hospitality. So here we are today. So let's talk about kind of the different sectors within outdoor hospitality that we're going to cover for weeks to come on this show. First, real quickly, adventure travel, super interesting, booming area, pretty wide kind of spectrum within adventure travel. You might think it's just scuba diving or parasailing or skydiving or, all those crazy things where you're
all the things I'm afraid of doing.
Yeah. Yes. Which it is certainly that, but it's also a lot about learning and culture and people and community. So we're super excited to dive into that in the weeks to come. Next is ecotourism. Alex, why don't you talk to us a little bit about ecotourism?
Yeah, I think kind of as the name implies, it's obviously a combination between, regular sort of travel and tourism and sort of how that fits within the ecosystem in whatever place you're trying to go to. But it's really about kind of those similar pillars of community, trying to fit in within that natural environment that you're trying to look at or serve. But it's really travel with a purpose or a mission, trying to really connect with democracy or the people within that sort of area of focus. In prior weeks, we'll be covering kind of some 7 principles of ecotourism and really dive into this a lot more. And I think it's a cool area of travel that especially millennials and younger folks like us are kind of not only traveling, focusing on ourselves, which sometimes that's definitely needed to kind of rejuvenate, but also turning travel around and using it as a real force for good in the world.
Well said. So looking at the kind of bigger subject matter here of outdoor hospitality, very far-reaching term there that I think is ever evolving. First, I think people, when they hear outdoor hospitality, they think probably primarily of campgrounds and RV parks, which is a huge part of our industry. It's a very fast-changing landscape with private equity and real estate investment trusts and hedge funds and other types of investment firms pouring a ton of capital into what is really a small niche. You look at kind of the global macro landscape, it's just over 2 million campsites. To compare it to the hotel industry, I think the last I saw there was 5.5 million hotel rooms in the US. I think somewhere around 2.5 million short-term rentals. So kind of similar in size to the vacation rental and short-term rental industry. It's split not quite in half between public land and public campgrounds and private campgrounds. And that's something we'll definitely dive into in weeks to come.
Yeah, it's a super interesting aspect because obviously on the as you said, the hotel and the short-term rental side, that sort of public component doesn't really exist. But this is more folks, sometimes can stay at public parks. So that might be even what folks are accustomed, as you said, when they think of, you might remember fondly the memories of camping with your dad or your mom at a state park or something like that. So definitely a huge part of our industry.
Yeah. And that's the public end of things we'll touch on with one of our news stories coming up here. Another big buzzword in the industry is the glamping industry, which if you look at number of units and kind of the size of the industry, it's much smaller, really tiny compared to the numbers we were just talking about. It's probably less than 10,000 glamping or lodging units, somewhere between 300 and 500 properties, but it is by far the fastest growing sector of outdoor hospitality. And then sort of tangentially related, it's not a super hard defined term, glamping. We'll dive into that, later on, but you also have these kind of new buzzy terms of outdoor hotels, outdoor resorts, landscape hotels, landscape resorts, when probably 3 years ago you would have just called it a glamping property. It's kind of a niche within the niche that's coming on really strong. There's a lot of really awesome entrepreneurs in that space. We'll probably profile in weeks to come that are doing some really cool things. And then honestly, probably one of the more overlooked sectors as part of outdoor hospitality, also relating to one of our big news stories coming up, is marinas.
Right.
So also a super fragmented business. There's somewhere between 11 and 12,000 marinas in the U.S. Obviously interesting from an investment perspective because it's waterfront real estate, very scarce, kind of by design and by its nature. So that's covers at a very high level. What are we talking about when we say outdoor hospitality? Campgrounds, RV parks, glamping, outdoor hotels, resorts, landscape hotels and resorts, and marinas. Anything else there, Alex?
No, I think that's great. As you touched on the marina side, I'd say let's dive into kind of our first news story of the day. Really a big one that was circulated on social a ton. At least I saw it on the beginning of this week. I think it really reflects a lot of kind of money changing hands, and we'll talk a little bit more about what this means. But Blackstone earlier this week acquired Safe Harbor Marinas from Sun Communities for $5.65 billion in cash. Safe Harbor owns and operates somewhere close to, I think it's 140 marinas across the U.S. and Puerto Rico. As you mentioned, Matt, these are kind of coastal cities on the east and west coast, but they've got some pretty amazing flagship properties throughout the country. They've also got a pretty large boat storage and super yacht servicing kind of component, which really reminds me of kind of RV dealerships or the RV side of the industry, having kind of the sales with the dock slips and the units, and then also this large component of service and storage and kind of the other ancillary streams. So really interesting transaction. Maybe let's define for folks who may not understand the importance of kind of Sun Communities, how they kind of sit, because I think it's interesting to kind of look at them as a REIT, where their focus lies and maybe why they even did this transaction in the first place.
Yeah, all really interesting questions. So Sun Communities is the second largest owner of RV parks in the country. They're a publicly traded real estate investment trust. They've been in the business forever. And in 2020, they acquired Safe Harbor Marinas. There's tons of parallels between the RV park business and the marina business. Just from a revenue standpoint, you have your mix of transient, nightly or daily RV site rentals or boat slip rentals. You have your long-term, monthly, annual, seasonal kind of aspect. Right. Operationally, if you take out the fact that one is operating in water and on docks and one is on land, it's very similar in terms of supply and demand and financials and operations. So naturally, the people that get into the RV park business at least look at getting into the marina business. You see a lot of back and forth and crossover. But this was such a fascinating, even the original transaction from 2020, right. That was a $2.1 billion transaction for 99 marinas at the time. So you're talking $20 million per marina. It's a little more complex than that because you're acquiring the whole operating business.
Right, but these were the highest of the high end marinas.
Yes.
This is not some local boat yard in your town somewhere, in the middle of nowhere. Even with the super yacht servicing was part of the business. I mean, when that is a core part of the revenue that Safe Harbor has, like we're looking at larger boats, yachts. These are nice docks. Like this is all kind of cream of the crop style in terms of luxury.
Yeah. Irreplaceable locations,
right?
High-end customer base. And I think it does speak to across the outdoor hospitality industry, there is a ton of focus on the high end of the market. It attracts the most investors. It's kind of the sexier fields and more lucrative stuff to play in. But yeah, I mean, it's so fast forward almost 5 years. They turn around, they added almost 40 marinas, and then they sold it for $5.65 billion. So you figure they at least doubled their money probably in 4 years. Now that's at $40 million a marina, which is just, kind of a mind-blowing number to me. These are large marinas in a lot of cases. I think I read the largest marina was 1,300 boat slips. And what's interesting is that Sun Communities, as an RV park operator, focuses heavily on the long-term business, monthlies,
Right.
seasonals, annuals. And
They
that
they
was,
kind of even position their RV business more like a mobile home type of operation, as you
sure.
mentioned, with trying to spread out these leases as long term as they can, raise the occupancy to such where it's 87, 94% occupancy. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
real they almost hate the transient customer in a lot of ways because of the uncertainty.
Right. And then the safe harbor at the time of the acquisition, and I'm sure it stayed pretty consistent, 70% of the revenue I read was long-term boat slip rentals. So it matched
Yeah.
the core business. Although it was a strategic exit, they made a bunch of money. I think that was probably a pretty big driver here. But Sun, over the last 24 months or so, has made a lot of moves to streamline their core business and get back to mobile home parks and RV parks and long-term rentals of those core businesses. They were in the software business. They divested out of the software business on the campground side. They've made a few exits, and that all signals streamlining the business. They also gained a ton of liquidity from this deal. A lot of people are assuming that they're going to be reducing their debt.
Right.
And,
And that's sort of the commentary that, as I was reading some, additional articles and Reuters and other things, like that was a big driver for, at least on Sun's side, as you said, in sort of comments on 90% of their core business, even prior to selling Safe Harbor, was mobile home parks and RV. And that although they had seen some great, sort of net operating income growth in the marina side, they kind of took that as their opportunity to, as you said, get rid of a more volatile part of the business, clear some debt, kind of refocus on things. And I think that's kind of a broader trend that we're seeing across the industry, is a lot of groups and a lot of people are wanting to kind of refocus. Let's get back to normal business. The sort of volatile COVID phase of things is kind of over, and that's kind of sunset. And I think now folks are starting to kind of realize where their strengths lie and divest assets that don't make sense in a lot of ways.
Well said. Well said. So speaking of billion-dollar transactions and billions of dollars, let's talk about a billionaire who is, I don't know, perhaps showing himself as an enemy of the outdoor hospitality industry. We're talking about Elon Musk, which I think we're live on Twitter right now. So hopefully, or X, what you call it.
We stay on the stream
the stream doesn't get cut or anything. But DOGE has been cutting federal land management agency jobs by the thousands. I think it's up to 5,000 job cuts, and these are park rangers and different people that kind of steward Bureau of Land Management land, National Park Service land, U.S. Forest Service land, which we talked about, the public versus private campground dynamic.
Right.
The federal government is a enormous provider of campsites. So, and it's also a big draw for private campgrounds.
Yeah, I think there's something like 500,000 or 600,000 public campsites across the country, in terms of places that folks go, from the best of the best kind of out west marquee properties to, as you said, properties that, normal folks like us would go to all across the country. So, when these cuts kind of happen, a lot of times I think we try not to kind of think about them affecting us. But if you were your family or somebody that has camped or will continue to camp at these places, these cuts could definitely have an impact, not only on those operations, but the outdoor rec economy more broadly surrounding that. Even, Matt, as you said, we're in the private campground business with your properties. And, we see a lot of folks traveling for interest, particularly in the outdoors, things like boating and fishing and hiking and all of the types of things that would really push somebody to want to go experience these places outdoors. All of those areas start to get affected as well. If folks are not making those trips, other economies, other private campgrounds are being affected with that kind of stuff as well. And I think that's why, Outdoor Alliance put out that press releases. They're really an organization that's a coalition of these outdoor tourism type of businesses, from the mountain clubs and the fishing societies and all of those folks kind of banding together saying, look, although these cuts may not affect our private organizations, this is the type of thing that has a ripple effect from, as you said, BLM land and National Park Service land down to the outdoor rec economies more broadly, and ultimately could trickle down to other businesses further down the pipeline.
100% agree with you there. And I think it's important to note, speaking with investors and all different types of parties to the outdoor hospitality industry, there seems to be a perception that public campsites are a direct competitor to private campsites.
Right.
And it's
what a myth in my mind.
Right. I mean, there's some truth to that if you're like super literal, but agree. Like, I have no concern. Like, people are like, well, you bought a campground that's right down the street from 200 state campsites. And I'm like, okay.
It supports our business. How many people say, I'm trying to go to the state park to go hiking, or because, it's close to these certain things that I want to go take my family and enjoy. The other dirty secret with a lot of this stuff is like, the inventory is scarce. Although we kind of mentioned that there's 500, 600,000 of these public campsites, the most coveted ones where everybody wants to go, you can't get in. They're booked up months in advance. We've seen the stories of waiting list upon waiting list to get top tier reservations for the best dates at some of our national and state parks across the country. So I think it's a thing that definitely supports the rest of the businesses that are around that, from private campgrounds to outdoor rec businesses and the like. So really interesting to see if some of those jobs kind of start to come back, maybe those kind of park ranger sort of maintenance and safety jobs, that kind of stuff feels essential. It seems like, maybe when there's, problems, whether it's in sanitation or maintenance, that maybe some things we'll reconsider. It'll kind of be an interesting story in my mind to see if Outdoor Alliance will be able to really kind of lobby against a lot of these cuts from what seem like essential jobs. I mean, we're not talking about, people in cushy offices. We're talking about, park rangers who pick up litter and trash and help make sure that the parks are safe and ready for folks. So super interesting to see if who will win out, if it'll kind of be Elon or kind of the outdoor rec folks in our industry.
Right.
But we're definitely starting to see a lot of these cuts, and it's kind of interesting to really kind of see what happens. It'll be kind of a crazy journey ahead.
Right. A couple more thoughts there. I mean, it's such a regional dynamic too. The country is pretty much cut in half, east to west. We're in New York. We're, on the eastern side of the country, obviously, and public campsites are like kind of forgotten for a lot of people. We don't have the expansive views of the Rocky Mountains or, like awesome public campgrounds in California that have views of the bluffs and the ocean. Like we have Acadia National Park, one of my favorite places on earth. But you look at that, there's so many thriving private campgrounds around Acadia National Park. And that's really the East, at least for the Northeast, that's like the one place we've got that's a beautiful national park. And, so we talk to people in the western part of the country and their team public campsites. And it's like, well, yeah, I understand that. You have so many that you have access to. You have these incredible public lands. But you listen to consumers, on the other hand, and a lot of the reasons that people go and choose private campsites over public campsites is safety. Right. You're out in the wilderness. There's so many news stories that pop up, missing persons, whatever, that start in national parks. Like that's might be a little alarmist there, but like there's at least a few I can remember off the top of my head that it's.
Or honestly, folks just want a little bit of that, like amenitization. Like they want to be able to talk to somebody. They want to be able to have something like,
the upkeep.
You don't mind kind of having to drive 10 minutes or 15 minutes to go someplace if you've got a really great place to stay.
Right.
So yeah, it's a great thought about, how much of this conversation has become kind of well, you're stealing from me. That's kind of even the kind of DOGE mantra with all of this. Again, not to get political here or anything, but it's kind of it's not a one sum or one size fits all kind of solution here. There can really be scenarios where everybody can benefit. It doesn't have to be, steal from one person and give it to another.
Yes. Speaking of stealing.
Yeah. This one was crazy, Matt. This next story is crazy.
So this one popped up on my X Twitter timeline. Good old Billy McFarland tweeting that Fyre Festival 2 is happening. It's real. So I dug into this a little bit. It was such a fascinating story with the Netflix and
I was going to say, why don't for somebody who has never heard of Fyre before, what does somebody need to know about Billy McFarland? And it feels like we're kind of living a fever dream, as you said, going back to 2017, talking about this same story kind of all over again.
Yes. So Billy McFarland, serial entrepreneur of sorts, got this idea to start Fyre Festival. There's some really awesome, if this is not something you're aware of, go on Netflix, go on Hulu, watch the documentaries. They're super interesting and entertaining. He launched this festival in the Caribbean somewhere, and it was a total flop. There's supposed to be luxurious accommodations. It was like FEMA tents and like cheese sandwiches. And I mean, it was a worldwide phenomenon of just how bad this thing flopped. People paid millions and millions of dollars. I think he sold like 5,000 tickets. He went to jail for 4 years. He got out of jail. He's been doing some different things. And now he's launched Fyre Festival 2, which to his credit, it seems like it's much more well thought out. It seems like he's looped in some partners and event producers that with
actual background, actual credibility, folks that also, do not want to go to jail or, have put their reputation on the line, so to speak.
Yes. So yeah, he's got tickets ranging from $1,400 for like kind of a general admission ticket with no accommodations. You got to find your own accommodations. It's on Isla Mujeres.
In Mexico.
Apologies for my my Spanish accent and pronunciation there.
In Mexico, down in the Caribbean.
Mexico,
yep.
And so there's resorts there. So $1,400, fend for yourself, come enjoy the festival, find your own accommodations, all the way up to $1.1 million for the highest level ticket. The value proposition there is that you get to basically attend the festival with the artists and the talent and stay where they're staying and intermingle with the artists and
which honestly sounds like the same concept he tried to run last time.
Yes.
I mean, this really sounds like a realization. We'll see. I'm still, kind of slightly skeptical. I think watching the documentaries and it would give me a long pause of whether or not I would ever consider doing this. And, kind of on the adventure travel side of things, like this would again be one of those, like skydiving or kind of scuba diving. This would be one of those on my list that I would not be doing as an adventure travel kind of bucket list item. But nonetheless, as you said, I think it's super interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
No doubt there will be a lot of people who want to go just see with their own eyes for this thing. If Billy can actually kind of pull this thing off and if he can do it, I think it's super interesting to ask kind of, would you go to Fyre 2.0 and kind of what this is all going to turn out to be. I'm going to say no as me, but I'm going to, and I'm not going to endorse that anybody go do this, but I think it's super interesting nonetheless to see if this is something that actually gets pulled off.
Yes, I think Will is listening in the background. So Will, this is my official request to go to Fyre Festival 2 and to do a live show. Maybe this is our first GMO retreat / Fyre Festival 2.0. I don't know. Maybe it's kind of a co-branded thing. No, I would say probably not. We'll kind of we'll have some
regular, better retreats, I think kind of
Yes.
coming and planned in the future. But
Yes,
uh,
we
this
had
would-
our
this would
people
not
reach
be
out to
one.
Billy's people, so we'll keep you posted.
Yeah, exactly.
But he did get some reputable resorts on board. So I think in the $15,000 to $25,000 ticket range, you get a stay in a king room. I think I read at one of two pretty nice looking resorts in Mexico there. So figure he's, I think he'll get a lot of people going that are just going because of the phenomenon of
you got to
Fyre
see
Festival.
it, right? And
Yeah.
that's sort of it's like watching a train wreck, right? You almost don't want to take your eyes off it. It's such a unique story. It was such a cultural moment back in 2017. And now for it to be kind of 7-8 years later, after all of the court cases said, all of the prison sentence that was served, all of the just fraud and folks that were involved in it and the money that was lost. And then to kind of come out and say, all right, but trust me this time, guys, like I'm going to do it the right way. I'm going to show you a little bit through a lot of this proof, as you talked about. I'm going to, get some people and do it. I think there are going to be a lot of people that say, like I said, I just got to see it. I got to go and experience and see, what this all turns out to be. So it'll be super interesting. I don't think we mentioned, I think it's this coming May, right? In 2025.
May 2025.
Yeah, exactly. So
he has not announced.
We'll do a follow-up story after the fact. See if this is a Fyre Festival 2.0 disaster or whether this thing turns out to be a pretty cool product in the end.
Right. He reportedly hasn't announced any artists. So he's claiming, A players, A artists, but I have to imagine that's a tough
probably
sell.
Waiting for some cash too to sort of pay out to the artist as pre-sale tickets book in.
Definitely.
Well, cool, Matt. I think let's maybe wrap up here quick with some data on sort of the RV side of the business. This is something kind of bringing it back around to kind of campgrounds, outdoor hospitality, and really kind of what consumer demand is looking like. We saw some data come out this week from the RVIA, or the RV Industry Association, looking at an increase of about 21.9% with RV shipments in the month of January of 2025 compared to 2024. Sort of the biggest increase in that came in travel trailers, motor homes, and sort of park model RVs were down. Just sort of, quickly as we wrap up here, what do you think that this kind of says about consumer demand as we kind of see a good month to really kick off 2025, especially when we look at this compared to last year? Is consumer demand kind of coming back? And what do you kind of think that the sort of travel trailer indication has in all of this?
Yeah, it's super interesting. And I think it's important to note that travel trailers and towable RVs probably make up 95% of the RV sales market.
Right.
So,
it's also the thing people are kind of most accustomed to, right? If you think of an RV, you probably think of a small little camper, a pop-up, or a tow behind, or a travel trailer. Those are all kind of interchangeable terms in language there.
Yes, exactly. So they're the entry point for most people. And, it is a small sample size for just a month, but I think it is a little bit surprising. The narrative in the industry, we had the big COVID boom, and it was unprecedented numbers of, just huge numbers of RV sales on an annual basis for 2021, 2022. And then, in recent years, we saw it go down, I think probably for the first time, maybe ever, or in a few decades.
Right.
RV sales actually going down year to year. So now, it could be people getting out of more expensive models and kind of downsizing RV wise to a more affordable model.
Right. We have seen kind of used RV prices come down about 2.8% within the last few months, which is kind of interesting. To your point about kind of overall market saturation with so many RVs being built in sort of the COVID era and the COVID bubble. And now I think pricing is finally starting to come back down to kind of a more reasonable level. Yeah. And I think that might be causing folks to kind of make the choice to buy new but also kind of buy used at a better price than maybe what they would have over the last couple of years.
Yeah. I think there's a couple factors here at play potentially. There's interest rates are normalizing a little bit, so there might be some better deals out there. To buy the new RVs. There's been this narrative ever since the beginning of the pandemic of don't buy COVID era new RVs because they're the craftsmanship and the materials are terrible because they were just
there's a lot of data to support that.
Yeah. And so that maybe that's normalizing a little bit, and the craftsmanship and the quality is returning.
Consumer confidence is coming back.
Yeah. Yep. And then also, I mean, there is still kind of some uncertainty in the economy. So I think that could feed into the potential narrative of it's a more affordable entry point. Maybe people are downsizing from a motorhome to a fifth wheel or a motorhome to a travel trailer to, just have either lower payments or get some liquidity back from a, $200,000 or $1 million motorhome. So I think there's, like I said, I think there's potentially several factors at play there. Again, caveat it with it is a small sample size. So you could see the month of January is up huge. And then at the end of 2025, we come back and say, it was actually still a down year. So,
right. And I think it is interesting to kind of do the year over year comparison. That's good, right? Obviously, as we get closer to the summer and normal camping season, all of the numbers in general will kind of pick up. But good start to the year being January. And we'll keep kind of sharing these numbers and doing our updates as to kind of where things go and kind of what the outlook looks like over the next year.
Looking forward to it.
Matt, what do you say? I think that was pretty good for episode number 1.
Yeah, I think you did a great job, Alex. I think we'll only improve as time goes on.
Yeah.
We'll have lots of fun stories and content coming up. We'll have, follow us on LinkedIn and on Twitter. We'll include a bunch of stuff in the show notes so you can see us dive deeper into these kinds of stories with the written word, if that's more your thing. But subscribe, tell us what you want to hear, what you want us to talk about. Always feel free to jump in with comments. We'll include some ways to reach out in the show notes.
And I was going to say, any question is fair game. We recognize, a lot of you guys, maybe from the traditional hospitality space or somebody who's unfamiliar with kind of a lot that what we talked about. And today was, a little bit of shock with terminology, or this was, not stuff you were kind of familiar with hearing. Let us know. We're happy to kind of break things down a little bit more and want you guys to feel good about what we're sharing, feel comfortable and learn with us in this space as we get going here. And really appreciate everybody for tuning in for episode 1. We'll definitely see everybody back here next Thursday, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern, wherever you get your podcasts.